Steve Poland here, and we all know that our fish need oxygen to breathe. Or at least I hope we all know that. And the beneficial bacteria in our aquariums need oxygen in order to break down waste. So it's super important to have adequate oxygen levels in your tank. And the go-to method for a lot of people to achieve this is running an air pump. But I have one big problem with this. In general, I tend to go for a more natural look in my display aquariums, and these bubbles don't look natural. I mean, it's pretty rare in nature to see a bunch of bubbles constantly floating to the surface in a fixed location. And don't get me wrong, it's definitely a matter of preference. But I don't want bubbles in my aquarium for the same reason I don't want blue gravel or a pirate ship or SpongeBob decorations. I just don't happen to like the way it looks. I'm not against the theory or effectiveness of air pumps. I run air into all of my breeder and grow out tanks in my basement. That whole fish room runs on sponge filters connected to a central air pump. But no one sees those tanks but me, and the entire world on YouTube. But they don't get a lot of visitors in person. They're not display tanks. Fortunately, it's easy to ditch those air pumps on any tank that you want to look more natural. Here are a couple of tips. The simplest thing you can do is aim one of your filter returns at the surface of the water. This will cause constant surface agitation, and that surface agitation is what oxygenates the water. When you run an air pump and connect it to an air stone or sponge filter, it's not the bubbles traveling through the water that are causing the oxygenation. I think this is a common misconception. It's the surface agitation caused by those bubbles that's doing the work. So aiming a filter at the surface and disrupting it is doing the same thing. Now, if your filter is configured in a way that prevents you from doing this, an alternative is to get a small power head and aim it toward the surface instead. Another thing you can do to help your oxygen levels is decrease the temperature of your water. Now, obviously it needs to stay within the correct range for the type of fish you're keeping, but the amount of oxygen that can be dissolved in the water is dependent on the temperature. So a lower temperature means more oxygen. My final tip for increasing your oxygen is something you should be doing anyway, which is keeping up with your regular maintenance and feeding an appropriate amount. Because the more waste that's left to rot in your tank, the more bacteria and oxygen is required to break it down. So be sure to stick to your water change and filter cleaning schedule. Now, something to keep in mind is that every tank is different. So if you're running an air pump and decide to employ one of these methods and remove it, please be sure to monitor your tank closely afterwards to be sure that your fish have enough oxygen. If you see them gasping at the surface of the water, that's bad. Go straight back to the air pump and reevaluate. But if all goes well, enjoy your more natural looking tank and possibly lower noise level and electricity bill. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and if this is your first time here, then I would love to have you subscribe. Because each week, I bring you a new video sharing my experiences in the aquarium hobby. I give updates on my tanks, review products, show you DIY projects, and share tips and tricks to help you take your tank to the next level. Hit subscribe to follow along. Have a good one.